Thank you. I'm Cal Stiller, an old, literally, friend of Henry's. Joyce, Janet, Mark, and Marianne, we share your grief today, and I tell you we love you. In the history of nation, there appears from time to time persons of such consequence to the nation that one assumes that they must have been born to power or wealth or influence, and so by dint of that beginning played out their expected impact on others. But we come together today to honor and celebrate one who was humbly born in a small town, not of wealth or influence, whose parents believed that hard work, integrity, and perseverance and honoring one's faith, as the Proverbs say, that a man's gifts or talents will make room for him and place him before great men. Henry Friesen was a man born with great natural gifts, and because of his hard work, integrity, and perseverance, changed this nation and the world for the better. He went to school, junior school, in Morden, and then later at the Mennonite Brethren Collegiate Institute. He followed his dreams to become a doctor by entering the University of Manitoba and graduating with an MD in 1958. Began his postgraduate training in Boston at Tufts after finishing 3 years here in Manitoba. Received his fellowship in the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada in 1963. In 65, he was recruited, along with John Dirks, by John Beck. John Dirks, who had a 71-year relationship with Henry all through medical school, and would be here today, but for a sudden illness in his family. He was recruited by John Beck to go to university to set up his laboratory there, where he announced very soon after coming there his scientific prowess by being the first to discover and isolate the human hormone prolactin, later found to have a myriad of metabolic effects, and its control crucial to fertility. Continued to work on prolactin, helped to develop a drug, bromocriptine, that's still used today in human and veterinary medicine, and with its use allowed thousands of women who were infertile to bear children. When he was at McGill at the Royal Victoria Hospital, he and Joyce married, and he married her to his everlasting joy. Along with prolactin, he also isolated and identified the techniques for concentrating human growth hormone, which wasn't available commercially at that time, and developed a program for administration to young children who were living with stunted growth because of lack of normal human growth hormone. In 73, he was recruited to the University of Manitoba by Arnold Neymark to become the professor and chair of the Department of Physiology. In all, he authored and published 460 scientific publications. His talent had made room for him in a spectacular way. His leadership talents that he had demonstrated in Winnipeg in forming what was the finest physiology department in Canada, without question, was recognized nationally, and in 1991 he was named as president of the Medical Research Council of Canada and moved to Ottawa with Joyce and the family, not necessarily because they wanted to, but because he had to. Right, Joyce? There, he transformed medical research nationally. He changed the concept of government grants to science to be thought of as investments in people, health, and the future. Grew the government and private sector investment in research and conceived of broadening the concept of research, creating the Canadian Institute of Health Research. He did this for selfless reasons, smoothing the way for the transformation he had conceived. He stepped down, chaired the Transforming Council, and appointed the new leadership. Through all of this, he had opponents, but no enemies. In fact, till today, I don't think Henry has an enemy. Then he founded and was the initial chair of Genome Canada for 5 years, the first such organization that helped put Canada into the forefront of genomics research and discovery. Throughout his career, he served as president of prestigious and impactful scientific organizations such as the National Cancer Institute, the Canadian Society for Clinical Investigation, co-founded the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame, conceived of the Canadian Medical Discovery Fund, and struck a strategic relationship with the pharmaceutical industry to advance research. One man. Henry Friesen received the highest honors he could have possibly received from his peers throughout his entire life at each stage. He was made a distinguished university professor by his alma mater. He received the Order of Manitoba from his province, an officer of the Order of Canada from his nation, and ultimately made a companion of that order the highest rank. He was awarded the Koch Medal from the Endocrine Society for scientific achievements, the Gairdner International Award for his discovery of prolactin, the Gairdner Foundation Whiteman Award for leadership, was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society and awarded the McLaughlin Medal, again the highest honor by the Royal Society. He was elected of one of only 10 distinguished fellows of the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences, inducted as a laureate of the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame, and given the FNG Star Award, the highest award again from the Canadian Medical Association. And then following that, awarded multiple doctorates from several Canadian universities. But he wouldn't tell you anything about that. In other words, in each arena that he operated, his peers recognized him as one to be greatly honored. His university, his province, his country, his international scientific peers, his nation's most prestigious awards in science and in medicine and leadership, and ultimately the highest honor that's possible to receive from the country for making Canada a better place. Our past Governor General David Johnston penned a note to Henry just last week and summed it up. Henry, in your inimitable leadership, you have inspired so many to find the courage to act boldly and wisely. Arguably, there has been no other individual in the past century in Canada who has been so consequential in medical science than has Henry Friesen, in the depth and breadth of his contributions and leadership, there is no equal. Henry had a brilliant mind, and a visionary one. He could connect dots others couldn't see. He was fastidious, clear-eyed, evidence-based, and had a perseverance that was applied to his passions and goals that saw ideas through to completion, on his own if necessary. This is exemplified in his isolation of prolactin against odds, against the failure of many others, by many people. He persisted, succeeded, and then he saw it through to the development of a drug that helped thousands of patients. His integrity was his hallmark. He did not give his word unless he could deliver. It was who he was. Henry was a masterful communicator. He translated his concepts in ways that captured the core values but simplified the subject. It was this communication skill and my observation and translation of ideas that endeared him to the great political leaders of the day and allowed the growth and transformation of the Canadian Institute of Health Research. Although he was a true visionary and often sought to accomplish audacious goals, I was always impressed with his pragmatism. He didn't compromise his goals and principles, but he took a realistic approach to what he could achieve at any one time. I remember so well going in to meetings with parties that held firm opinions that opposed his plans. He would arrive with a big smile on his face, as he always did, enthusiastically greet the parties. He'd done some research on something that they were interested in, and he relayed a story that they would find pleasing. And after listening to them, would launch into a sales pitch of such vigor and eloquence that it astounded everyone. Even if he didn't get support for the concept fully, he would thank them for their time and attention and for their valuable counsel, and promise them that he would take their ideas into consideration and return to get further support. We would leave the meeting, and he would say, "Well, Cal, we didn't get everything, but there's hope there that we can move them along." And then he would say, as I heard from his lips so often, "It's great to be alive, isn't it, Cal?" with that twinkle in his eye. Always the optimist, he was the example of the pragmatism of taking part of the loaf if you could get it all, and then coming back later for the rest. His enthusiasm for learning and discovering was infectious. He cared about your ideas and thoughts and took a personal interest in everyone with whom he conversed. One never doubted that he cared. If you had not met the great Dr. Henry Friesen, when one hears of his genius and talent, of all his accomplishments and of his many great honors, one conjures up a picture of an imposing, proud man who knew his worth and was proud of it. But that was not the Henry we knew. Henry was genuinely humble. He did not put himself before others. He did not draw attention to himself. When he entered a room, you didn't notice him until he began to inquire of others' ideas and ultimately share his wisdom. Even when he was the chair of a meeting, he controlled the agenda through his intellectual prowess and reasoning. Always softly given. He did not impose his opinion. His ideas and intellect served as magnets that attracted a majority opinion. And when his ideas were adopted, he would immediately turn to someone and thank them for the wonderful thought and idea and origin of the thought and give credit to others. He helped people achieve their dreams and ideas and celebrated their achievements. He had a deep faith quietly lived but constant. He was an example of nobility, not as an obligation, but because he cared. I thought when I was talking last week to Mark about a great allegory which most of you know about, and it's called Pilgrim's Progress. And it's a wonderful story of the progress of a pilgrim through to the celestial city, and written in such descriptive terms. And one of the characters there was called Mr. Greatheart. Mr. Greatheart's job was to go along the King's Highway, find those individuals who were in trouble or were about to get in trouble, who couldn't achieve what they needed to achieve, and help them along the way to take them up to the river across from the celestial city. And then Mr. Greatheart would go back down the highway to find the next person who needed help. I thought of Henry as Mr. Greatheart. Throughout his journey through life, he has helped individuals, whether they're undergraduates, postgraduates, patients, friends, colleagues. He's always helped them quietly and never asked to be recognized. Last Wednesday, our Mr. Greatheart, Henry Friesen, came to the river, and this time he didn't turn back. He stepped into the water, and looking up in that sense of my extension of that allegory, he saw the celestial city. And there was a congregation of individuals that amazed him. Some he recognized, some he didn't. Many he didn't. He recognized some of his junior colleagues, some of his young scientists looking for establishment grants, some of his undergraduates. But he didn't recognize the thousands of women who were there who had been infertile but could then bear children because of his discovery, or the children who now had grown because of their stunted growth being reversed as a result of his work. And I can hear the roar of jubilation as it announced, Mr. Greatheart has come home. Welcome home, Henry. The world, your world, honors you and thanks you. Thanks you so much. But we'll miss you terribly. Thank you.